According to research done by the New York Times, by age 12, 12% of students in California had already engaged in vaginal sex. 7.9% had engaged in oral sex, and 6.5% in anal sex, and 4% in three different types of intercourse. By age 12, this means that around 30% of students in California had engaged in some type of intercourse, and most do not have sex safely. These statistics are from CNN. Since we know that abstinence is not an option and that children do not listen when adults push abstinence, why not educate these children? We have heard the saying that the safest form of safe sex is abstinence, but this is unrealistic in this day and age, as sex is forced into our faces via television ads, billboards, posters, movie trailers, the list goes on. 6th grade is too early to be teaching sexual education, but it still needs to be taught. I would argue that 8th grade is the best time to start teaching children about the safest forms of sex and how to prevent unwanted pregnancies and diseases. Abstinence for children under the age of 12 is important, although unrealistic. The repercussions of an unwanted pregnancy in a child that young are intense and life-altering. However, I believe that around 8th grade, older teenagers are going to become curious and begin to experiment sexually with partners. The Burlingame School District teaches sex ed starting at 7th grade. The lesson plans for the 7th graders are, in many different ways, different from those of the 8th graders. 7th graders begin to learn about the impact that being sexually active can have on your social life, your family, your friendships, the way your peers view you. It discusses the sex that is presented to us in the media. It even starts to help children identify their sexual preferences and their gender identity. 8th graders learn about the STD prevention and how to deal with accidental pregnancies. However, at the start of this program, parents began to become frustrated with the school board, saying that their child did not need to learn from the school or the classes, so the classes became optional and the parents could pull their children out of them and teach them in ways that they preferred. Other schools require sexual education as well. The website Health Connected shares that in January 2016, California adopted a new law, the California Healthy Youth Act, covering sexual health education in public schools. Sexual health education is required twice during a student's educational career in California, once in middle school and once in high school. Sexual health education provided in any grade, including puberty education, must be medically accurate and age appropriate. Materials must be appropriate for students of all races, genders, sexual orientations, ethnic and cultural backgrounds, pupils with disabilities, and English learners. All instructions must. Here are the guidelines that the instructions must follow. This is from the Health Connected website. The instructions must affirmatively recognize people have different orientation and include examples. Teach about gender, gender expression, gender identity, and the harm of negative stereotypes. Encourage communication with parents, guardians, and trusted adults. Teach about healthy relationships, about decision-making, negotiation, and refusal skills. Teach the value and prepare pupils to have and maintain committed relationships, such as marriage. Furthermore, STDs are something that can be prevented with the proper sexual education. 50% of the documented STDs are in children and adults from ages 15 to 24. This proves that children age 12 who would be in 6th grade are not interested or as curious as those who are 15 or in 8th grade. This is important because if schools teach sexual education too early, the children will be uncomfortable and not retain any information. If they are taught at a time in their lives when they begin to become sexually active and are curious, they'll be more likely to remember the information and safety tips that teachers can offer. Another downside to teaching sexual education in middle schools, or in public schools at all, is that most children are unwilling and uncomfortable to talk about their sexual activities with a teacher rather than a parent or a friend that they trust. In conclusion, sexual education should be a part of school curriculums, but it should not be required that children take it or that it is for any child younger than 12 years of age. We know that teenagers as young as 12 are engaging in sexual intercourse, but the statistic is small and continues to decrease. The Guttmacher Institute shares that about 50% of males and females of age 15 have already had sex or had sex on or after their 15th birthday. This is when the interest in sexual activity begins, and this is when we should begin to educate. 6th grade is too early to be teaching sex education, but it still needs to be taught. I believe that 8th grade is the best time to start teaching children about the safest forms of sex and how to prevent unwanted pregnancies and diseases.